What's good, y'all? So more on the importance of being heard and hearing everyone out. Um, there are two types of people that exist most days. Not even people. Let's scratch the idea of people and let's really narrow it down to its dynamic. So there are two types of dynamics that reside in human beings. It's the one who seeks to be heard and the one who hears. So the listener and the one who is being heard. I want you guys to think of that dynamic as we continue on in this video. The importance of vulnerability, communication, socialization. It all begins by having the ability to hear another person. And this doesn't mean that hear another person without conditions, without your own opinions or conditions. Is having the ability to hear somebody outside of the word descriptive language they are using. It is not about taking everything with a grain of salt, or neither is it about absorbing everything what someone says. It is about being in the essence of listening. It's about connecting to someone, not necessarily their words, but their essence. What it is that they're trying to portray that words itself cannot all encapsulate or describe or even begin to explain. This understanding of communication can be further explained by our innate communicative um, language that we as all humans learn in infancy before we have the words to describe or think or even speak how we felt as babies. We were communicating and learning communication, learning to read communication and also deliver communication through observing. There's a specific term for this. It is called pre-linguistic communication. And it's all to do with sensing. It's all to do with the child itself. It's feeling what it feels on the inside and sensing what's going on the outside. It's not words that it first learns, but it sounds. It hears the sounds of words being spoken by the parents, and it mimics the sounds that are now heard. This is all done before the actual word forming process. It is an abstract layer of the solidified, definite word character. So because we have those capabilities innately in us, and whether we are aware of it or not, we are constantly communicating in this way. It gives you the opportunity to understand fully the concept of miscommunication, where one has missensed the other person's intent in some way, shape, or form. They have sensed something externally and then mistook it for something as feeling something. Their feeling of what they sensed has become internalized and they've They mistook it. This doesn't mean that we are out of whack with our senses either. How we sense the world and how we feel the world are two different things. Feeling is our inner worlds, and sensing is communication of the outer world with our inner world. It is no different than word exchange, conversation, and interaction with another human being, whether being of the same skin color, skin complexity, or different. Though how you interact with each and every different person will be sensed differently in you. For example, there could be communication between a darker skinned individual and a lighter skinned individual. It's not the skin complexity that makes up for communication, for miscommunication. It is how deeply one feels. It is everything of the inner worlds of both humans that are constantly being shifted during interaction. What I mean by this is one of the humans could have a deeper understanding of self, or, yeah, have a deeper understanding of self, a deeper inner awareness. Another human, the other one, could have a deeper understanding of outside of self. So they have a deeper sense of the things outside of them, while this other person has a deeper sense of the world inside of them. Now, upon communication, they would be somewhat complete. Their communication wouldn't be missed. So what causes miscommunication? This is something I'd have to think about a bit further. But in an instance like that, regardless of the skin complexity, let's just say two humans, one, both humans may have perceptions, have a sense, a greater sense of the world outside of them than they do on the world inside of them. So both humans have a grander understanding of how the world operates outside of them, not inside of them. So they have outer awareness. And because of this is where somewhat miscommunication begins. Because if the outer external world outside of them is heightened, then how they feel in some sense or some topics of communication. So their inner worlds, how it digests on the inner world, may differ. It may be felt differently, even though they both sense the same things. Now, couple that with the idea of the context that we are given about ourselves through schooling or through word of mouth or through our own individual experiences with other people, right? So that just makes a whole world of complexity when it comes to communication. Because those contexts are what allow us to describe how we feel inside to the outside. But if we are only aware of the external, and we don't know how we feel inside, then we are miscommunicating not ourselves. We are miscommunicating ourselves at times. No, that's just a very general, broad, vague, whatever example. But let's now turn our attention, focus back to the main idea here, with keeping that in mind. Hearing people out is important, like I said, because we are not only wanting to be heard, but we are equal listeners. There is not one person who is supposed to be a listener and one person who's supposed to be a talker. That is a dynamic that we see externally. However, this is the full dynamic of us, meaning a good listener on the outside, someone who would be described as a good listener, is not because they can just sit there and listen to somebody all day talking. No, like a therapist. It is because they know how to listen to themselves. It is that feeling that I talked about, the feeling and sensing dynamic. Feeling's all about the internal, sensing's all about the external. Similarly, listening, being a good listener is all about the internal. Hearing is about the external. But when you are in conversation with someone, it's more like you're hearing them instead of listening. You turn off listening because you're not listening to yourself. You're hearing somebody else now. Hearing someone else out, hearing each other out, vulnerability is what allows one to know how it's felt to be received. I talked about in one of my videos about having a wonderful conversation with a woman where I was able to be vulnerable for the first time in my life, maybe in a long time. And the interaction was different than anything I've ever experienced before. I couldn't quite put the words to it, but this is the most accurate. It is because my life I've been the one to listen to everyone else. The internal skill that one learns or should learn to acquire of listening to oneself had been externalized to where now I have to listen to other people and sense them at the very same time. And that's been my life for a very, very long time. So vulnerability, I was at all times. And people took advantage of this. When I learned how to listen to myself, when I turned listening from an external thing to an internal thing, that's when I actually began to hear myself. I began to understand myself. I began to understand not what people saw of me, but how I needed to see of me. People will see you in any way, shape, or form they want to. It is not your choice to decide that. But when you don't have the inner ability to listen to yourself, then every single thing that someone tells you, you will end up internalizing. So false narratives, false perceptions, false personalities, personas, and the manipulation that was sought onto you, you will now also begin to seek onto others. This is science. This is also nature. So, the reason why this conversation with this woman it was everything. That's how I can best to describe it. It was everything. It's because I was being received in a way that I hadn't before. No one has ever received me in such ways. My vulnerability wasn't used against me, it was heard in the same way that I heard others. It was reciprocated, and it was all I needed. Was all I needed. I needed to know what it felt like to be heard in the way that I heard everyone else. And that right there is why it's so important to hear people out. It is not about you. We all want to be listened to, but we don't even know how to hear other people. There was a quote that I've heard. It said, "How can you enjoy the roots if you can't love? How can you love? How can you enjoy the fruits if you do not love the roots?" And there's something similar here. You cannot be listened. You cannot be heard when you do not know, when you yourself do not know how to hear other people. And you also equally cannot be listened. You cannot listen to yourself. People will not listen to you if you don't even know how to listen to yourself. So it's both things. Hearing and listening are things that we should do internally. And the greater that we do this internally, the better we will be able to do this externally. And what this does is it strengthens the connection that you have with people. It strengthens the social network and interconnected relationships and dynamics. It allows for more diversity, diverse unification. It allows people to feel safe. And not in the sense that they rely on you, but when two people have done this themselves, two people, meaning they have optimized their listening and hearing capabilities internally, and they interact with one another, they both feel safe in their bodies, no matter where they're at, no matter who they're with. And in this way, they are easily they are easily received. Now, let's take, for example, someone who is a good listener of themselves and knows how to hear themselves properly as well. They also know how to receive the next person who may not know how to hear themselves. And this is quite literally to describe the dynamic between me and this woman. I couldn't hear myself in the way that she heard me. And so with each and every almost translation that she had given me, and then her respective suggestion, it changed me a little. It shifted me a little bit. And it got me to really look, not peer, but hear me. Hear what I'm saying. But sometimes you cannot hear what you're saying when you're someone who has been hearing everyone else, who has been learned to hear everyone else. or if you've learned to listen to everyone else. So like I said, these practices, they're for you, but they're also for the next person, and they're also for everyone else. And it's not something that you think about. It's just something that happens. So whether you do it for yourself or you find motivation to do it for somebody else, it'll always come back to you. If you if you are a great listener to somebody else on the external, then somewhere inside of you, you are also a good listener for yourself. If you know how to hear people outside of you, then you are also inside of you as a as a way for you to hear yourself. Life works like that. It is nature. Like I said, it is something that we already do. It's something that we are all born with. And it's the first practices of it are through infancy. Infancy, babies. Before the words, before the thoughts, it was the sounds, it was the feeling, it was the sensing, it was the expression, it was the emotion. That is our innate, subtle language in which we all still speak and interact through at all times. And technology, it mimics this. Technology builds itself around this. Sometimes when you're in conversation, there are things you may not want to hear, but they are things that you need to hear. And you may not need to hear it, but it is something that you should hear. You can do whatever you like. You could take these words with a grain of salt. But one thing is for certain, that after you do hear them, it is going to shift you no matter what. The conversation that I left, I didn't know exactly what it was that I left with. But as I took my time to rest and restore and went about my day, as days went by, as time went on, the full understanding is what I'm speaking about right now. Maybe it's not the full understanding, but it's a big piece of it, is what it is that I learned. So it doesn't matter if you can understand something right away or not, because you do. You just need to be open to listening. You need to know how to hear. No distractions, just presence. It's 7:23 on the clock for anyone who's looking for a sign. It is 1142026. I hope you guys have learned something valuable. And if you enjoyed this, let me know. Also, to understand more about these pre-linguistic communication style, check out my video. It should be somewhere in this little bubble, whatever direction it pops up on your screen. No. uh, Sometimes I have these things where it's like I want to end with a clever little quote, but I have nothing more to say, so I will end it here. Um, until next time, peace.